Hi, welcome to the Beer Temple. I am Chris Quinn. I am coming to you from down here in the dungeon, as I have been doing lately. I probably look like I've been dwelling in a dungeon for a little while now, a little bit unkempt. We've got a big expansion going on, and that's very exciting to us, and that's been just taking most of the time that I would normally spend on personal grooming, which was, a solid 20 hours a week or more. But anyway, I wanted to do a show, and I wanted to, a couple beers that kind of came through the shop, I just felt like would make for a good show. And it was around, there's probably this thing that you've heard of called New England style IPA, hazy IPA, Juicy IPA. We've had some on the show before, but really, since we've started putting out less videos or videos less frequently, these things have absolutely exploded. And some people say that, the New England style and the Juicy style are two completely distinct things, almost as if they're like parallel styles that just happen to both have bases in the Northeast of the United States. I personally think that their Juicy is kind of a variant of the New England style. You can send all your, hate comments to me for thinking that, but anyway. But they certainly aren't limited to New England anymore. And, these styles, just stylistically, are not going to be crystal clear. They're going to have a lot of sometimes particulate matter, some sort of like colloidal haze in there. They are hopped very aggressively. They tend to have a very tropical, juicy hop profile. And oftentimes they are very low in bitterness and sometimes even quite sweet for an IPA. While also being pale, they're not like, the 90s IPAs that had some caramel crystal malt in there and you got your sweetness that way. Totally different beast here. So anyway, what I was getting to was this style has definitely grown beyond New England, but they are still considered to kind of be at their best from New England. And I was asking around what people thought was, their favorites of this juicy style. Because I'll just put it out there, I prefer the New England style beers that I've had. I prefer with a little bit more bitterness to it. I think that they're a little more well-rounded. But people were telling me that Trillium was the way to go. I have had Trillium in the past. I don't know if I've had Congress Street, but I don't think I've had this cutting tiles before, not that I can remember anyway. But anyway, some people were saying, more than one, that they felt that these guys were the best at the Juicy style. The other big name out there is Treehouse, and I think you have some in the Treehouse camp, some in the Trillium camp. It just so happened that the people I talked to said Trillium, and I had a friend who actually lives in Canton, Massachusetts, who can easily pick them up. I'm not going to lie that factored into it. So these cans are very, very fresh. These were canned, let's look, less than a week ago. They're about 5 days old. They've been kept cold the entire time. So let me look again. This one is 6 days old. So you're talking about less than a week here, okay? And here in the Midwest, I personally think that Transient has been really doing a great job at the New England style. And I've heard before that a lot of people think that these New England versions are really the best, but by the time they come out here, they're kind of banged up. They're so sensitive to aging. They age very rapidly. They don't hold up very well. That we just like, the people like their local version, whether it be in the Midwest or anywhere else other than New England, because they're getting the fresh stuff. But fresh to fresh, there would be no comparison. That's the argument. I don't necessarily know if I believe that, but that's the argument. And am I biased? Probably yes. I mean, I'm friends with the owner of Transient, Chris Betts. He's a great guy. I like him, but I'm going to try to put that aside. I think I'll do a decent job and just taste these things out, talk through them, and just see. Sorry. At least in this case, where is at least Transient at, or the Midwest. I'll say this guy, sorry Transient, you guys are holding the flag for the Midwest and really for the rest of the United States. No pressure here. So I've got two from them. I've got the Juices Loose, which is their double IPA at 8%, and then another one called Honeystone, which is a double IPA with honey. added to it, also at 8%. Now I have a double IPA and an IPA here. Now the IPA, the double IPA is the Galaxy Cutting Tiles. Galaxy is one of my absolute favorite hops. Very, very tropical. It's their double IPA, comes in at 8.5%, and it also has honey in it. And this is the Conger Street, kind of the classic pale ale from them. You know, this is a pale ale going against an IPA going against double IPAs, but you're talking about 7.2 and 8%. So I don't see it as like a 10%, you know, classic Midwest style IPA like Dreadnought or something like that going against a 5% IPA. You know, I think they're very close. I think it is kind of an even matchup, if you will. So enough about that. Let's get into it. Why don't I start with the two unhoneyed ones and then the two honeyed ones. Okay, so we'll start with Trillium. I'll go side by side. Not necessarily that I'm going to do it that way, but we'll see. It will be interesting to try it that way. So we've got the Conger Street. These were these are actually a little bit older. This one is canned. Man, it's really hard to see on this guy. But anyway, because the date coder on the bottom. This one is about little less than, or just about 3 weeks old. So a week, 3 weeks, whatever. It's important to say. These were given to us by Chris Betts. He did not know I was going to use it for this. I don't know if he would have if he did know. But anyway, there you have it. You've got your Transient here and your Trillium there. Looking at them, they look, wow, almost, I mean, they're identical for all intents and purposes. The foam, the carbonation level, they do have that really deep orange juice color, kind of like the Tropicana orange juice at the bottom, and then the fresh squeezed color of orange juice up at the top. Really nice, just lacing. Even the head retention is like identical. I have to keep them like this, or else I will get them confused, at least by appearance. That's amazing. I mean, look at that. They're identical. I mean, the amount of haze and everything is identical. That's pretty remarkable. Okay, the Trillium here, Conger Street, has that. Definitely that kind of bready. I often get peach note to it, like a fresh peach, like you're smelling a peach, and then also biting into it. It has both those flavors there, like smelling the skin of it. A little bit of a bready note too. There is some like dough almost, as opposed to like baked bread. Very hoppy, obviously, but a lot of flavor and aroma hops. It just immediately kind of goes at you. It's very juicy. It has kind of like an orange and orange pith element to it. Maybe some green orange, curacao orange as well. The bitterness is very, very slow to develop. It's got a very soft mouthfeel to it, meaning that the carbonation isn't really prickling your tongue. The bite comes in so late that the beer has long since been drank, and there is some sweetness to it as well. Whoops, should probably put my phone on silent. Yeah. And then I'll just decline that. Sorry, Dad. I've got more important things to talk about than my own father. Anyway, sorry, Dad. He doesn't watch these anyway, so don't worry. It has like a sweet mid palate, so it's very juicy up front. It has kind of like that bready mid palate to it. and then it just kind of fades away, which is the one thing that I haven't generally liked. Now, to say this does not have bitterness is not fair. There is bitterness to it. And it's incredibly hoppy without being really overly astringent. It might have a little astringency to it, a little bit of a tannic note to it, maybe, but not much. But it is funny where the bite kind of finishes the end of a typical IPA. This is much more kind of juice, sweet, fades, and then the bitterness kind of slowly comes up at you. It's a solid beer. It's really, it's good. I'm curious how much of this I could drink throughout the course of a night. But, I've been called Old Man Chris because, back in my day, beers were made better. And there could be, a kids these days element to it. Anyway, let's look at Transient's The Juice is Loose. All right, so immediately, it does not jump out of the glass like the Trillium does. And I've had this beer fresher, so I'm going to chalk this up to it being an age thing. That said, this beer is 3 weeks old. So just to give you an idea of how the aroma hops, at least, drop out so quickly, it's just a sign of how delicate this beer can be. So what am I getting here? I'm getting more of that bready, doughy character that's still certainly there. Maybe a hint of sulfur, maybe, like a eggy element, pardon me, omelet thing to it. That sounds better than sulfur. And some of that kind of green, like a green pineapple thing. I'm noticing the carbonation more here. It's quite hoppy. Again, not as intense. The malt comes through more. The hops are still very much the same vein. They are those kind of orange, a little bit of orange pith too. I don't think it's as sweet. I think it's actually a little drier than the Trillium as well. But at the same time, oddly enough, much less bitter as well. So this one really does kind of fade away, although without that, it's weird. This one just seems to kind of, because this is dry, it doesn't just kind of like, it feels less flabby in a way, where the sweetness, I want to have that little punch there that does eventually come. So yeah, so I would definitely say if we were going, and I'll just say, I guess we are doing it. I didn't intend for it to be this way originally, but I would definitely give the edge to the less than a week old Trillium to the just over 3 week old Juice is Loose. So whatever that means, is it a fair comparison? No. Is any comparison fair? No. But these beers as they stand, the Trillium is better. Now, let's try this one. I'm going to try to look again at when this darn beer was packaged. I have no idea. It looks like it was done, well, nobody wants to sit there. I don't know. Maybe it's like 2 weeks old. It's very hard for me to tell. But let's go, and you know what? I'll do the Transient first this time. This is the Honeystone. I want to make sure I get the name right. Versus the Cutting Tiles. Now, there is a little bit different color here. The Cutting Tiles is a little lighter, where this has kind of that very dark, like amber or goldenrod color down the center. This is very, very light and very hazy. This is like, it does look like some sort of like tropical juice, honestly. Yeah, like I don't know. And it's lighter. You can even see it in the head, although they're both quite fluffy heads here. Let's give this Transient. Okay, much more green. It has that same doughy aroma to it as well, that kind of yeasty thing. And like mango. Yeah, I'm getting like a kind of a mango, less peachy, but still in that kind of same vein. And like a green pine and mango. Maybe not pine, but like just a green flavor, you know, some sort of, yeah, green flavor, whatever that means to you. Much more flavor from the hops as well. It has that kind of really just like you can almost like feel the hops in there. The green element that I was getting in the aroma, I think, really came through even more in the flavor. But it more or less does taste like it smells. This one is also definitely sweeter as well, and fades away with very, very little bitterness to it. Low carbonation, very soft mouthfeel, and just kind of washes away, you know. I mean, even now as I'm talking, I'm getting more of like a juicy flavor, more of like an orange juice thing now. And very little bitterness. You know, sometimes bitterness really takes a long time to creep up. Maybe now I'm just starting to get a hair, but not much. Good beer. Now we've got the cutting tiles, the Galaxy cutting tiles, I should say. The strongest of them. This one is 8.5%. This one has like, you know, so sometimes when like hops like, mainly Citra and Galaxy I get this with, you get this weird kind of like, some people call it sweat socks, some people call it like BO. I tend to think of it as like fruit that's starting to turn a little bit, like just starting to ferment a little bit. I get that sometimes with Galaxy and Citra and some of those like really exotic aroma hops. I definitely have that here. It's like this pungent, almost musty isn't quite right, because then you're thinking like mold and mothballs and stuff like that. And it's not that, but it's you know, this like kind of pungent aroma and of a slightly like beginning to turn overripe bit of tropical fruit. You know, it has a lot of that kind of green and pineapple, but more so you've kind of have like a guava thing going here too. Definitely. I'd say, in fact, that guava more than pineapple, but you know, I mean, you get the idea here. Again, just like the first thing you notice is this kind of green vegetal hop flavor is just pervasive. It's funny. This beer is astringent, not bitter. So the finish is like this kind of drying, like my mouth feels like all the moisture is being wicked from it. That could just be from the disgusting amount of hops that I'm sure is put into this beer. But if you like the flavor of, you know, these tropical hops, I mean, that's what this tastes like to me. There is a little bit of bitterness now finally coming on. It's a little aspirin-y for me, the bite. But it's good. I mean, I'm not going to say that. And it's sweet, too. You know, that lack of bite, really, it does finish very sweet. And again, I'm curious, like, how much, if I had, you know, an endless supply of Trillium, how much I would really go to, or when I would want something with some bite at the end. Just me personally, I think that kind of completes a beer and has me going for that bite of food or that next sip of beer. This one I think is definitely closer. I think if you're looking for just something that has more of a kind of juice flavor, this is it. If you want something that's a little drier, finishes a little, which is funny, like I said, this is sweet, but it's still drier than this. The carbonation's more lively too, and honestly, I might be perceiving it as drier because that carbonation is wicking away or bubbling off that beer from my tongue and getting some of that sweetness off and scrubbing my palate. And it could just come down to that. I like the carbonation level on this more. Believe it or not, that does really affect the experience of drinking a beer. So in this case, I will say narrowly I prefer this, but I certainly could see people preferring this one as well. And I'm not also just saying that so it's a draw. But I mean, honestly, I think of the 4 today, I think the Congress Street IPA is my favorite. Yeah, I'd say so. Also has the most bite to it, so I think what you're seeing is that this is all about preference. But yeah, it was a cool thing to try these side by side. These are a lot of beers that people really kind of geek out for and go to extreme measures to try. So I feel very grateful to be able to try them right here, and I feel very grateful for the ability to take them upstairs and let everyone else try them as well. Thank you guys for indulging me and listening to me just kind of go on and on about these 4 cans of beer. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all those places, beertemple.com, craftbeertemple.com. And look out, we're going to have some changes coming there as well. But until next time, I've got some great New England beer to drink, and hopefully you do too. Cheers.